Well, see, and that's where there's going to be a bit of a problem is to how to square that. I'm going to show you apparently you've got some competition for the cheerleader role from, in fact, let's just show that first from Hassett here, who was on Fox News this morning talking about this beautiful red, white, and blue dome and how amazing it was in bringing Iran to the table.
Basically, what happened was that the president showed with his resolve that we were willing to start escorting ships through. And I think that that was maybe the thing that pushed the Iranians one step closer to making a deal. I can tell you that I was walking around in and out of the building yesterday, seeing a lot of action in the Situation Room with negotiators, and it looked like the mood was high. That we'll have to see what happens. You never know with the Iranians, but absolutely it looks like the folks that are negotiating these things seem to be feeling like they're making a lot of progress right now.
Yeah. Now, here's the problem. You've got everybody going, okay, then that's the play. The play is we won, we did great. Let's have a negotiated settlement. There's Hassett out there. And then the rug gets pulled out of him by none other than Donald Trump himself when he's looking for a white flag.
Other presidents should have done this. 47 years they've been toying with these stupid people. That's not the way we play. No, we do it the old-fashioned way. And they should wave. They're very proud. Maybe you won't see a white flag, but essentially that's already what they are. They should wave the white flag of surrender.
I mean, come on, Scott. How can you say on the afternoon of the 5th that I went back to total surrender and white flag. And then this morning, now it's like, okay, well, you know what? We're 48 hours away from a negotiated settlement. I mean, who can make sense of that?
Nobody. And it's sort of facetious when I say that I'll be the president's biggest cheerleader, because I think, by now I can't cheerlead this president. But I do want an end to this conflict. But this is the problem. Normally, when policy is made, it's done through an interagency process of coordination. I've participated in that, deputies meetings at the White House Situation Room that then percolates up to the principals meetings where the president is then briefed and decisions are made. And then once again, it percolates down and people implement that. And the whole time people shut up about it because the only people talking about this are the spin meisters who only spin that which is allowed to be spun because it's policy being implemented and you don't want to give away the guns. But this is a president. We don't have any of that taking place. There is no interagency process taking place today. We are a nation where policy is formulated in the brains of literally an insane man who then puts it out either through spontaneous statements made to the press or Truth Social. I mean, Truth Social has become a part of American policy. We literally operate through declarative policy statements, often contradictory, made by the president on his social media platform. This is unprecedented in history. And as a result, we have dysfunctional policies. And we have dysfunction throughout the totality of everything we do. Let me give you an example, Colonel. You're familiar with the fact that we were talking about deploying Dark Eagle to the region.
Yeah,
the hypersonic weapon. Well, and this is a game changer. I mean, you see how the media runs with it. This is a game changer. Dark Eagle changes everything because those Iranians had pulled their missiles back beyond the 300 range of our precision strike missile. And so we needed this weapon to come in and put them at risk. The Dark Eagle, 1,750 miles of hypersonic range to strike precision and destroy. And I'm like,
you could be a good cheerleader, by the way, if you decided to do it. Let me just say.
I guess I could become a Pete, but the point is, I'd have to deal with reality.
Right.
I'd say, well, first of all, it's never been fully operationally tested. People need to understand it. Yes, it's done a number of operational tests, but that the Pentagon still doesn't know how lethal the warhead is. Yeah, well, there it is. It may not work 100%. We don't know how lethal it is. This is supposed to be a hard target killer. I mean, it's supposed to penetrate in, and we don't know because we've never tested it. They're afraid to test it. But the other thing is, let's say it was a hard target killer. How many of these do we have? I mean, because we just finished a war where we fired hundreds of Tomahawk missiles, hundreds of joint standoff munition. We got eight of them. They cost, now the Pentagon will say they cost $15 million each. That's a lie. They cost $41 million each. $15 million is the projected cost once you bring things up to production. But these 8 missiles cost $41 million each. They don't work. We don't know if they work. And even if they did work, we fire 8 of them and we're done. We can produce 1 missile a month. So the Iranians will be sitting there going, well, you fired 8 at us. I guess we'll wait another month for the other one to show up. So, yeah, are any targets worth this much? The answer is no. So, but this literally is the embodiment of the entire American campaign against Iran. Overhyped capability. Your audience needs to understand this. We didn't destroy anything of value in Iran for 39 days of a bombardment. Okay, we blew up empty buildings. The stuff that was in these buildings was evacuated, and we did not penetrate. We dropped a lot of GBU 57s, the big penetrators. 4 of them didn't blow up, and the Iranians own them right now. They've got them. They're reverse engineering them. Other munitions, they have a whole bunch of our munitions. There's an extremely high dud rate with our precision-guided munitions. During the Gulf War, it's still a classified number. I was surprised to find that out because I was going to write an article about it. And then I did the research. I'm like, well, I guess I can't write this article because the dud rate of Tomahawk missiles during the Gulf War is a classified number. Now, you can guess why that is. Is it because it's a very low number or a very high number? You get to make that decision, not me. But in 2017, using the Block 4 variant, we fired like 63 of these against Syria. 23 of them didn't work. Now, I'm not a Marine. I'm not very good at math, but that's like more than 1/3 that didn't work. And that's in 2017. You'd imagine things got improved. Are you beginning to see the picture here? Our stuff doesn't work. It doesn't work the way we claim it works. And so we're firing missiles that don't work against targets that don't exist. In 1991, I was part of the targeting infrastructure that oversaw the strategic air campaign against Iraq, in particular against the Scud missile production capabilities, et cetera. And I have to tell you, I was impressed. I saw the reports. I did the imagery analysis. I was like, we destroyed everything, man. We blew up their factories. We blew up everything. Then I went to Iraq as a weapons inspector. Unique. I was the only person to do that, go from targeting to inspecting, on-ground inspection. And I realized we blew up a bunch of buildings, but there was nothing in the buildings. Nothing. It had all been evacuated. And I'm like, well, then we didn't destroy anything, did we? It was the inspectors that now had to hunt down the stuff that should have been the building and get rid of it. But in the General Al-Ubaidi, who was the deputy of the defense industry, he became the oil minister. He commissioned an Iraqi battle damage assessment report because you remember we had I forget what his name was, but the guy from Johns Hopkins who wrote the air power survey and how we won the war with air power. And air power is so good and almighty and powerful and wonderful. And so the Iraqis did their own survey. In 1996, the survey was ready, and I didn't get a copy of it, but I got to see it. He invited me to his office, and we went through it because he wanted to make a point. He said, you didn't destroy anything. Here it is, bomb by bomb by bomb. Every strike, they recorded it, and they showed what the impact was. We didn't destroy anything against Iraq in the Gulf War. And now, I'm just telling you right now, we didn't destroy anything in Iran. You think the Iranians are scared right now? They're rebuilding everything that we blew up. People don't understand that. This is a nation that's in reconstruction mode. They're putting in new bridges. And if we blow it, it's the same thing the Iraqis told me. I remember him saying, you guys are very good at blowing things up. And he said, but we're very good at pouring concrete. The difference is when you blew things up, nothing was in that building. But when we finish pouring the concrete and we put things back in the building, we're back up to full capacity. And this is what Iran is. We haven't impacted Iran at all. And this is the reality. This is the reality. And now we are talking about restarting a campaign that didn't work the first time. Einstein said the definition of insanity is seeking to do the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. We are literally an insane nation if we think we're going to resume a campaign against a nation that hasn't been defeated using an arsenal that's been depleted. We don't have long-range standoff strike capability. We got
Yeah,
dark.
apparently, General Jack Keane didn't get that memo. Here's what he seems to think.
The objective here, after closing down the straits and we go to a ceasefire, the objective then was to drag that ceasefire out as much as possible. And how do they do that? By promising that they're going to make some concessions. And now our negotiators hear those words and go back to the president and say, look, this thing looks like it may happen. And you heard him say publicly, look, these guys really want a deal. I think that has always been part of their negotiating strategy. With the Obama administration over the nuclear deal, 18 months, they dragged this thing out. They're really good at this. They lie to our faces about what they're willing to make concessions of, and then all of a sudden we're sitting down. We fly all the way out there, 18 hours of sitting across from the guy. Okay, we want to hear the consent. Oh, no, we have to check with somebody else, and somebody else says, no deal. So the president is on to this, and he knows full well. I mean, I called him, he's our stopback measure, because he is not going to accept a bad deal.
Yeah, is he though? Is he going to accept a bad deal? Is he going to have a choice to accept a bad deal? But I mean, let's just back up to the premise there that we had this negotiation, this waste of time, this 18 months to get the JCPOA away, which is how actual diplomacy works. And you know that better than anybody. No. But then this claim that 18 hours, we went in there and we were asking them to give us the concession, and they didn't give it. And what a surprise there. But if this is the kind of mentality, and you heard him, he's on the phone with Trump. Trump does listen to him. There's no doubt about it. And that should concern all of us.
But, first of all, he's a liar. Either he's ignorant and then he's overselling himself, which I think because he's a man who now makes a living on TV and, corporate media, that's what he does for a living, oversell things. But he's just straight up lying. None of what he said is true. What we know is that the Iranians showed up in Islamabad with a very large negotiating team, very senior negotiating team that had all of the information with them. They never once made a phone call back home. Never once. All decisions had been made, and all the data to back up the decisions were there. They had technicians, everything. Any question the United States had, the Iranians were there. They brought in their 10-point plan, and they were ready to address each and one of these issues. We had, said I forget what it was, a 14 or 18-point plan that we had on our own. But when Vance and Witkoff and Kushner showed up, they didn't have a plan. They didn't come down and say, here's our plan. They came down and said, what do you got? So they were in receive mode from the start. They said, what do you got? And the Iranians are laying it out there. It's not the Iranians that called home for instructions. It was Vance and Witkoff and Kushner who called home to Trump. They had to pause, stop, because this is new. We're not ready for this. Call back home. And they were receiving phone calls from Netanyahu as well. So Keane is a liar, straight up liar. It's the United States that has not negotiated in good faith because, again, we're not dealing with reality. Again, people would say, well, that's pretty stupid. No. We're not playing connect the dots of traditional geopolitics here. This was a negotiation designed to provide the President of the United States a politically viable off-ramp, not to resolve the underlying fundamental realities of this war. And so it was important to create the perception of Iranian noncompliance. And this is, first of all, this is the beauty of shows like yours and other people's shows, independent media shows, because we're having a conversation here that does not take place on mainstream media. Mainstream media exists to promulgate the lies of the administration. Yeah. So the fiction that's created by the Trump White House to sell a politically acceptable scenario to the American people. This is why Keane is on Fox News saying what he says. He's not there to tell the truth. He's there to spin lies to create a politically acceptable, landing pad for this president who's jumping off of a building because that's the only way he's going to get out of this. But that's what's going on. It's just a straight up lie. The truth is the Iranians have always been, and the Iranians were better prepared in the JCPOA than we were. They've always been better prepared. The Iranians were more honest to their executive was more honest to their legislative branch. I just want to remind people that Iran is not a dictatorship of the Ayatollahs. It doesn't operate that way. It's a constitutional republic that has a well-defined executive, a well-defined parliamentary legislative branch, and the parliament has tremendous powers, like our Congress should have, but we don't operate.
Should have, yeah.
President Obama was more. Well, first, he received a lot of congressional pushback, but so did the Iranian president. The Iranian parliament was not thrilled with the JCPOA. They felt that it was a capitulation, but there was coordination. Well, one of the more interesting times is when Zarif, who was the foreign minister, got before there, and the parliament was threatening to come in and rip him apart, saying that you have betrayed the nation by negotiating this. And then he had to sit down and explain it. But in the end, the parliament voted in favor of this. We never had that kind of honesty. The reason why Trump was able to pull out of the JCPOA is because Obama didn't have the support of Congress, the Senate. He couldn't turn an executive order into a treaty. And so what we had was an executive order, not a treaty, not a binding agreement, which allowed Donald Trump to rescind the executive order and withdraw from it at will. We have the dysfunctional system. We, the United States, have the dysfunctional system. The Iranian system, it's not perfect, but it works.
Yeah, and I want to get into in the remainder of the time we get here. Let's look at this, even if it's a pretend deal, at some of the possible, even with this, the roadblocks to it. First of all, in terms of all the things that Trump said, you talked about how he's making up stories or whatever, is a little disconnected from reality. But there is one reality that I think he may be very much keenly aware of, and I'm sure this is not a surprise to you. But it looks like somebody was making a lot of money this morning when his True Social points went out here. You see, they made this comment at 7 a.m., 7:41, I think exactly. Somebody put in $125 million short right about that time. And then it seems like that they made a lot of money, and several other things are connected. And this is like the fifth or sixth time that's happened. I mean, this is probably a rhetorical question, but will there ever be anybody ever held to account for all of these incredible insider trading deals?
The interesting is when somebody brought this up to the president, he said, "What can I do?" The implication when he says, "It's a casino out there. Gambles are made." No, this is straight up criminal activity. Martha Stewart went to jail for the weakest insider trading case ever brought before an American court, but they said the law is the law. This is an outright violation of the law. This is, there's a special forces sergeant that's going to jail because he's
too low ranking.
Yeah, he put a bet in on Maduro's future because he had insider knowledge. These trades that are being done by people who have knowledge of Donald Trump's social media posting. This is the danger of policy by social media posting, because now when you put this much emphasis on a social media post, the timing of this post becomes imperative. So when people find out that the president's about to contradict himself, because he sets it up with a post that always happens on a Friday, and then the market goes into crazy manipulations, and everybody's predicting Monday the world's going to come to an end. And then at the appropriate time on Sunday night or Monday morning, he puts out a post that contradicts it. But somebody has made the bet. And I think this most last one, you showed 120. I think it's $970 million was actually put in on shorts. And there's just people rolling in money. Now, what should happen is these assets should be frozen and the people investigated. We know who placed the bets. They should be investigated, and all communications, they should be brought in. All communications, connectivity should be found out. But that's not going to happen because, first of all, Congress has made a killing off of insider trading forever. So you're never going to get, a Democrat in Congress going, well, let's investigate this, because once you open up that door, then people are going to find out how they turned, $120,000 salary into, $35 million in income in 3 years. They do it by insider trading. That's just the way it's the most corrupt place in the world. And now we have a president who's literally sold the national security policy of the United States. And that's what many people believe this war was all about to begin with, is the recapitalization of Trump's inner circle of supporters who may have lost some money because of bad business decisions, et cetera. And this means that we have Americans dying so that Donald Trump's millionaire buddies can make money. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one day this because there won't be a Republican in the White House forever, and I think one day that there'll be justice brought in, or at least I can console myself that. All right, but let's look real quick in the last bit of time we have here. What is the possibility that Trump could succeed in claiming whatever he wants to get off when you have the Iranian side very cognizant of their position? And here's just a couple of things here. Number one, Trump was asking for a white flag. Well, apparently the National Security Commission spokesman for Iran is looking for his own white flag. He said, if the U.S. doesn't surrender and offer the necessary concessions, or if they try any mischief, we will deliver a harsh response. Also yesterday afternoon, they formally announced the Persian Gulf Strait Authority, whereby they will maintain permanent control of the status of the strait, and they have no intention whatsoever of letting that thing go or the financial gains that can come with that. So if those are the two, one of the key points is that they're not going to surrender anything, and they're going to make sure we have this, which is one of the key things that we are asking for. How do you square that circle?
It's going to be hard. I think let's throw in two things. Let's look at the Iranian foreign minister and the travel that he's undertaken recently. He recently went to Moscow, where he met with Vladimir Putin. Then after that, Vladimir Putin picked up the phone and initiated a phone call with Donald Trump that lasted 90 minutes. Part of the readout from that is that Putin put Trump on notice that if the United States resumes, or its allies resume, kinetic action against Iran, the results will be disastrous for not just the United States and the Gulf Arab allies, but for the world, that the economic consequences of what Iran would do in retaliation are such that it would bring permanent damage to the global economy, including that of the United States. And I think that's a large reason why Trump is looking for an off-ramp right now, because he has no option. It will be, political suicide to resume kinetic operations. But why would Irakchi go there? Because Irakchi is a very pragmatic person, and he understands that the Iranians aren't going to get away with publicly dictating humiliating terms to the American president. And so I think what we're seeing here is the beginning of a grand bargain between Russia and the United States. There's another problem set going on right now that may become very relevant in the near future, and that's, of course, Ukraine. And Russia right now has put all of the citizens of Kiev and diplomatic staff on notice to evacuate. It's not a request, it's a demand: evacuate. Because if Ukraine launches a drone attack on May 9th, Victory Day, Russia will take out the city of Ukraine. They've already said that's going to happen. Russia is also preparing to launch strikes against the Baltic states, who are providing a drone corridor for Ukraine to strike targets. In a month's time, there's the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum taking place in St. Petersburg. It's the largest forum of this type in the world. It's bigger than the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. And if Ukraine attacks this forum, it's going to be a declaration of war. I think Russia's going to nip it in the bud right now. But I think we're about to see a dramatic escalation of the Ukrainian-Russian conflict, the Russian-NATO conflict, where Russia is going to strike NATO targets because of what they've done, and they're going to strike Kiev in a devastating fashion. The United States, I believe, is going to let this happen because it's necessary to break the deadlock between Russia and Europe on the negotiation. Trump wants credit for bringing this war to an end. And I think the Russians are saying, we can allow you to take credit for ending both wars. We can help manipulate the narrative in a way that you're the peacemaker. And that's what Trump's looking for right now. He's looking for something that creates political viability come the midterm elections in November. Remember, no matter what happens, we're still going to have a very hard summer. And as Bill Clinton's campaign in 1992 reminded us, it's the economy, stupid. The American people aren't going to vote about Iran. They don't know enough about Iran. And to be honest, we're a nation that has sat back and allowed Israel to commit genocide against the Palestinians. Are we going to shed tears over 106? You think 165 dead Iranian school children is going to move the political needle here in the United States? And the answer is no. None of that is. What's going to move the political needle is the price of gas at the pump and the price of food at the store and all that. And Trump's going to be right. Like I said, there's going to be 6 to 8 weeks of very difficult economic times ahead of us that is going to hurt him because it's going to move into the silly season of the summer, which is a prelude to the decisive moments of the, leading up to the November midterm. So Trump's going to need all the help he can get. I think China is also, the Iraq chief went to China and he's meeting with Xi Jinping, who's going to have a summit supposedly with Donald Trump in a little bit of time too. And I think you're going to see the Chinese and the Russians pulling their diplomatic magic right here to help Donald Trump get this off ramp. And one key aspect of that is to emphasize that which needs to be emphasized and de-emphasize that which doesn't need to be emphasized. Let Donald Trump spin the data he wants to in a way that helps him domestically, while understanding that Iran is going to get virtually everything they want. But remember, the Iranians a little while ago said that they will never allow their 60% enriched uranium to leave Iranian shores. But part of this deal has that uranium going to Russia. So the Iranians are making some concessions that will allow Donald Trump to say, I have done this, I have done that, I have done this, but they're not going to give up the Strait of Hormuz. But what I think you're going to see there is that this Iranian authority is going to become an Iranian Omani authority. And that'll help, put lipstick on a pig.
Yeah, we'll see how that's going to work out here too. One thing that mitigates against this idea that Jack Keane and Keith Kellogg, some of these other Lindsey Graham, who still want to go back to the kinetic idea. This was in this morning's Washington Post. You may recall last week CNN and a couple of others had said that we had been hit worse than they thought. Well, the Washington Post says it's actually worse than that. Said Iranian airstrikes have damaged or destroyed at least 228 structures or pieces of equipment at U.S. military sites across the Middle East since the war began, hitting hangars, barracks, fuel depots, aircraft, and key radar communication systems and air defense equipment. According to the Washington Post analysis of satellite imagery, the amount of destruction is far larger than what has publicly been acknowledged by the U.S. government or previously reported. So the more we look into this, the worse we're figuring out we were hit. And so if anybody is thinking, yeah, let's restart this and, quote, get the last 25% of targets we didn't hit last time, what do they think is going to happen on our side if we restart?
This is going to be a disaster. Do you remember, I think it was just yesterday, how Pete Hegseth said that we had this tremendous victory over the Iranian Navy. I thought we sunk all their ships, but apparently we didn't. There's some fast boats out there, and we engaged and destroyed 6 of them. You remember that? It was decisive.
Yeah.
And not only that, but we escorted ships through the Strait of Hormuz. All a lie. What happened now, we know this because Rubio's admitted it. We started sailing toward the Strait of Hormuz. The Iranian Navy targeted us, fired warning missiles, and painted us with target acquisition radar. And we went into an emergency mode where we panicked and we sunk nearby civilian shipping because we were afraid that they're Iranian fast attack boats. And then we fired missiles that went off base and struck a United Arab Emirates oil facility. Then the UAE thought they were under a missile attack from Iran, so they started firing their own missiles and everything. That's what's going to happen. Our military is woefully unprepared for this. Do you understand what happened there? That's called panic, Colonel. Panic. And you know damn well that if you were a commander of a brigade and you had one of your battalion commanders panic, you'd relieve him on the spot because that's unprofessional. We are so scared. Our military knows what happened. Our military knows we got our asses handed to us. They know that we're not blowing up what we should have blown up. They know how lethal the Iranians are. They understand that the vast majority of our airstrikes were done using standoff weapons that we no longer possess. And at the moment we entered Iranian airspace, we became the victims. They shot down an F-15E. They shot down an A-10. They damaged other aircraft, and they interrupted the special forces operation by destroying aircraft. We don't control the Iranian airspace. Iran controls the Iranian airspace. This is the reality. We don't control the Strait of Hormuz. Iran controls the Strait of Hormuz. And we panicked when the Iranians said, we're going to sink your ship. We panicked and we killed, I think the number is now 20 innocent civilian fishermen who were just simply doing their job, in the Gulf. And we panicked and took them out because we thought they were Iranian fast attack boats.
Yeah, I hadn't seen that report, actually. I know you're just about out of time here, but one last thing that's really important here, and that's the wild card. Everything that can be worked out with between the U.S. and Iran, between the U.S. and Russia and China and Iran, and we can all figure this out, except there's this issue of Israel. And this is just a little bit of time ago. Israel targets leader of Hezbollah's Radwan force. Netanyahu says, so instead of that, knowing how critical that the Iranians place a complete ceasefire on all of their regional allies, to include Hezbollah, primarily Hezbollah, Israel could try and sink the thing by either going back against Hezbollah, or who knows, may even can trigger something back against Iran itself, because there seems to be those in Israel who don't care about all these consequential evidence or actions you talked about and the compounding ones economically. They just are myopically focused. Some are on the destruction of Iran, or trying to. To what degree are you concerned that that could upset all this other careful negotiations?
I think the solution is there, but people aren't recognizing it as the solution. The United States has bragged about how they created a successful peace negotiation between Lebanon and Israel, and they have a ceasefire. But what that ceasefire is preventing Israel from carrying out collective punishment of the Lebanese population for their inability to effectively deal with Hezbollah. And so you have this ceasefire that means that Israel can't go in and just level Beirut to punish the fact that Hezbollah won't surrender. But notice there's active fighting taking place on a daily basis, and nobody's talking about a collapse of the Israeli-Lebanese ceasefire, because this is now redefined as an Israel-Hezbollah fight purely. And this is a fight that Israel's losing this fight. People need to understand that. The Israelis are taking massive casualties on a daily basis by Hezbollah. They're not, running in and seizing Lebanese territory. They're trying to advance into villages that they can't capture because the Radwan forces and others are out there hooking and jabbing, making very effective use of FPV drones, by the way. Again, pointing to the one behind your back. This is a whole revolution in military warfare. The Israelis can't handle it. They've lost over 2 battalions of tanks so far. They've lost the equivalent of APCs, and the number of troops that they're losing is crippling. And these are elite troops. The Israelis right now are demoralized. They're afraid to advance, even these elite troops, because they're going to die. This is the reality. And Iran, I think, is more than happy to let this scenario play out. I actually think that part of the Russian-Chinese diplomatic compromise will be that to keep as long as the Israelis don't go into collective punishment mode and they keep it as a fight with Hezbollah, which is Hezbollah is winning, I think the Iranians are more than happy to let that play out and bring an end to this. Because remember, what Iran gains from this is economic liberation. The United States, all the people out there that hate Iran don't understand what's about to happen to Iran. When they become economically liberated, when they become fully integrated into the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, into BRICS, into the European Economic Union, two things. One, their economy is going to explode in a positive way. Things are going to be happening. That further solidifies the support of the people to the regime. And 2, they're going to be hugging close China, Russia, and others, close that the United States isn't going to be able to lever them apart. And that's their security guarantees. And so when this war ends, Iran will be liberated and will have a renaissance, an economic renaissance that, is great for the Iranian people, great for the region, and it should be great for the United States, because Donald Trump has always said, remember, he campaigned on the fact that he wanted to lift the sanctions so that, we could have business. But I think one of the fallouts from this is that Iran will never trust the United States again, nor should they. especially with its current leadership, and that Iran is going to strategically pivot away from the West. And that's a shame, because prior to this war, even the president of Iran and the foreign ministry of Iran wanted to maintain positive connectivity with the West. But because of our perfidy, because of, the fact that we can't tell the truth about anything, I think Iran is permanently pivoting to the East, and we're going to lose Iran forever.
Yeah, and I worry that others could be followed that in the future, because you can only lie so many times and undercut deals so many times and harm your allies so many times, like we're doing, before you finally start losing those allies. But we'll talk about that on another day. But in any case, really grateful for you to come on today and shine a light on some of these things that we're not hearing from many other sources. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
And we appreciate you guys too. Be sure and like and subscribe if you haven't done that on your way out. And we'll look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Daniel Davis Deep Dive. I don't try to talk you into buying gold or tell you how to run your stock portfolio, but there is a way you can help us. Subscribe, hit that like button, and share this with somebody you love.